What is the most stupid move that a company made? British businessman Gerald Ratner was the CEO of powerful jewelry company Ratners. In 1991, he gave a speech to a business forum in which he explained how his company was able to sell its products at such a low price. His words were, "Because it's total crap." The remarks were televised and widely publicized. Overnight, Ratners lost about £500 million of its company value, was forced to rebrand, it's now called Signet, and Ratner was made to resign. Such a blunder has now entered the English lexicon as doing a Ratners. It turns out Ratner's doing fine anyway. When he resigned, the £1 billion the company owed stayed with the company, and not Ratner. Then after 9 years of mortgaging his house, wise investments, and a new venture into health clubs, he was pretty much back on his feet, albeit not as rich as before. He runs a much smaller jewelry business, hopefully not selling total crap this time. Pepsi had a contest in the 1980s where the bottle caps had letters on the underside, and if you spelled your own last name, you won. Of course, the vowels were very rare, but they forgot about Vietnamese people named Ing, along with similar Eastern European names. Oops. McDonald's had a contest where you collected game pieces, and if the US won a medal in the Olympic sport on your game piece, you won a prize. I think it was something like bronze equals free medium soft drink, silver equals free regular size fries, gold equals free Big Mac. Russia and East Germany boycotted the Olympics. This was when Russia hadn't split into different countries and they were by far the biggest US rival. It was also when testing for performance-enhancing drugs was very unsophisticated, so Russian athletes often had big advantages. McDonald's gave away a lot more free food than they anticipated. Just looked it up. Yep. There was a weight loss product called AIDS. When the AIDS disease emerged, they decided not to change the name of the product so as not to compromise its identity. Who would have thought that people no longer wanted to buy AIDS, despite all the success that AIDS has in losing weight? Do you think Corona Extra will meet the same fate? Nah, people are buying Corona ironically. I wouldn't be surprised if their sales are at an all-time high. Steve Ballmer didn't take the smartphone seriously, laughed at the first iPhone, and Microsoft has basically become an enterprise services company because of it. A hugely successful one, but that was a huge miss, and it cost him his job. Similarly, BlackBerry, they should have switched to Android early on. Instead, they insisted on keeping their own orphan OS while apps developers stopped bothering to waste time writing apps for them, because the Apple and Android markets were so much bigger. Ballmer didn't get it on so many levels. Smartphone is a great example. By the time Microsoft got in the game, they were too far behind. So they bought Nokia to catch up and destroyed Nokia. Ballmer was very anti-Linux for business, literally had account managers fired if their customers adopted Linux as an enterprise standard. A lot of his mistakes came from stupidity and being out of touch, but also a great deal of ego. British vacuum manufacturer Hoover ran a promotion in the 90s to try and sell off old stock. Buy a cheap vacuum, get return flights to the US. They tried to make it difficult to claim the free flights, with some pretty dirty tactics designed to reduce the likelihood of a successful claim on the promotion. It did not end well, with the company completely misunderstanding of how far a British person will go to get something for, essentially, nothing. Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation bought MySpace for $580 million in 2005, saw its value rise to over $12 billion as it became the biggest social media platform by 2008. But then didn't adapt the company to the changing social media landscape that came to be dominated by Facebook and Twitter, and wound up selling it to online and network-specific media for $35 million in 2011, a loss of over $500 million, or $11+ billion if you count the company value at its highest point. And on the other side of that story, MySpace Tom made an absolute killing with that sale early on and traveled the world, becoming an excellent photographer who would never have to worry about money ever again. Kodak owned digital photography but couldn't break the addiction to film revenue to pursue it. I worked with a senior executive who was forced into retirement because he wouldn't shut up about digital being the future. I remember there was a time you couldn't buy a digital camera that did not have a Kodak sensor in it. That was very early on though. I was working for them when they decided to double down on film. I saw the writing on the wall and left. The Osborne 1 was the first portable computer. They announced the Osborne 2 before they'd made a profit on the Osborne 1. People stopped buying the Osborne 1 in anticipation of the Osborne 2. As a result of this, there never was an Osborne 2. The official economic term for announcing a product too early and killing sales, and therefore profits, is called the Osborne effect because of this. Now that's how to Munson like a pro. Back in 2009, Dig.com was the go-to link aggregation website on the internet. But they revamped their site using a new algorithm that focused on following power users, instead of just following topics, and the users hated it. I'm assuming it also made it much easier to inject sneaky ad content into the feed. So everyone migrated to Dig's smaller rival, Reddit, which was mostly tech-focused at the time. Reddit exploded after that, and I don't think anyone uses Dig anymore. All because they fucked with their algorithm. Hardee's in Australia got caught using dog food in their meat patties back in the 1970s and were forced to close all restaurants and exit the country as a result. They should make it a restaurant for dogs instead if that's the case. After about 4 years working for a company, I went to my boss around April last year with about a 10-minute discussion about the things I had helped improve while maintaining an absolutely excellent track record on goals, and asked for them to consider an immediate 15% raise. I was told no, it wasn't in the budget, but they could look at it next year. That June I interviewed with a competitor and got the job with a 40% raise and a signing bonus. When I told the first company they wanted to discuss ways to keep me on, I said no. That was your chance when I went to you. You just didn't know it at the time. Funny how the budget suddenly had room to make a competing offer then. If they'd done as I asked, they would have kept me plus would have saved money. So that's the dumbest thing I saw them do. Always be careful with accepting the competing offer from your first company, as you can be put on the cull list the next time they need to save money. If they're short-sighted enough to not provide the 15% the first time, they'll potentially consider you no longer be as loyal and thus willing to tolerate shenanigans. You may get the raise this year but the boot next year. OMG, are you me? I did the same thing. Spent 4 years building and running an essential function on my own. I was extremely efficient, saved the company millions. Then I got headhunted by a competitor, and their offered salary was 40% higher. Original employer matched it but took so long to get approvals that they were well past my deadline for accepting the new job offer, and I wasn't about to rescind my acceptance for just a match. Plus, as you said, it annoyed me that they had the budget all along to compensate me more fairly, and just never bothered. I gave over a month of notice, and in that time, they realized that finding someone with my niche skills and experience on the open market was not going to be cheap. They ended up having to offer an even higher salary for my replacement, and still had to outsource a major portion of the work to an expensive third-party firm on a permanent, ongoing basis. For months after I left, my replacement kept calling me, drowning in the volume of work despite most of it being outsourced, and saying, "I don't know how you did it all yourself." No hard feelings, I'm still on great terms with my old managers. I had a call to catch up with one of them last week, and she apologized for not doing more to keep me on back then. Around 2008-2009, while the economy was tanking, HP decided to cut the salaries of all its employees by 15%. Makes sense, right? Nope. The government contracting business was booming in the Washington, D.C. area and was one of their few profitable divisions. They lost 40% of their cleared employees before they sent a VP from California to figure out what was going on. They still haven't recovered from that debacle. Yeah, it's happened to a few companies. As soon as they do it, they lose the most talented people who have some mobility and are left with the dregs. What they didn't understand was that in the consulting business, the employees are the product. It's our time and work that makes the company money. Nokia not adopting Android as their main OS. The Lumia was a great phone, just didn't have all the apps. Getting rid of vanilla Coke. Then they brought it back, only it was shitty. Cadbury's being sold to Kraft. None of their chocolate tastes the same, and I haven't willingly had it since. If I can choose even store-owned brand over Cadbury's, I will. Completely destroyed a good British favorite. Damn near everything in the grocery store is in a constant, never-ending cycle of 1. Make it smaller. 2. Change the packaging to hide 1. 3. Use cheaper ingredients and hope people don't notice. 4. Raise the price. 5. Start again at 1. What is the most stupid move that a company made? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.